in itself is authoritarian and despotic, and inclusion, which basically shows that you have no constitutional principles whatsoever. The whole notion of democracy is not just electing people, it's constitutionalism, an idea of a system of government that a system of limited government that is functioned to serve certain goals. Prime among these goals are the rights of human beings. Now, there is sort of the way of Mubarak, the boogeyman style of solving the problem, fear tactics, and if they come and so on. And there are more legally tested, practiced in human history methods of limiting exclusivist and non-inclusive or failure to be inclusive type ideologies, religious or otherwise.
As with our previous lecture, Shariah Watch has graciously agreed to an extended Q&A, so we're going to take a few more questions. You, ma'am, and then you, and then you had another question. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. So those three right there, 1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
We have heard Mubarak saying that he is an Egyptian and he wants to remain in Egypt. He's not going to run for re-election. But those of us who think about conflict resolution, is it possible for him to step down and still be an Egyptian citizen? Could his safety be guaranteed so a peaceful transaction could take place? Because the way it is,
we'll take off.
Okay.
And then the other question that you said is it's a system. It's true that people cannot decide for other people, but for something to become solid, it needs to meet subjectivity as well as objectivity. In other words, what's good in the global world, what's good for one country, if it threatens the rest of the nations, then a step must be taken in order for that system to exist within itself, as well as coexist among other nations, as people are.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, you're talking about a new envisioning of Sharia, in which young people are saying that Sharia is justice. And so how do you think that vision will be interpreted, if at all, in the rest of the Muslim world, given what's going on today in Egypt and in Tunisia?
Yes, ma'am.
The Christian Copts in Egypt have criticized the Egyptian government for siding all the time with the Muslims against the Christians, or like not protecting the Christians. Why didn't the Christians come out in this protest and join forces with the Muslims to change that government?
Okay. The first question. Mubarak says he's Egyptian and he wants to die and be buried in Egypt. Yeah, he's Egyptian. I don't believe in well, you cannot denaturalize him, but I don't believe in forcible removal of citizenship anyway. He wants to be buried in Egypt, that's fine, as long as he's not alive and in power. If he wants to be alive and on some nice farm somewhere, taking care of his chickens and the thing about these paper despots, it's like Saddam Hussein. Saddam thought that when he falls, the Iraqi people, because they really do become delusional, they will just will not be able to go on without him. And he soon discovered that the minute he doesn't have the power of terror in his hand, that people can't stand him, and that's a reality. And so I think it would be good for the Egyptian people to not just let Mubarak run off, and also not to be vindictive. but it's good for the principle of justice that the criminal, humanitarian crimes that have been committed that be held responsible. Now, having said that, do I believe that if he says, okay, fine, I'll leave, but give me full guarantee that I will not be held responsible for my crimes? I mean, it irritates every fiber of justice in my being, but sometimes in order for people to move forward, you just have to accept something that is extremely distasteful. I'm definitely not, and I think it would be disastrous if people get the idea of the idea of actually vengeance, and that's very different from justice. Okay, as to nothing I said about the Muslim Brotherhood and all that, and ideological movements. Yes, of course, the whole idea is coexistence, and the whole idea is coexistence within rules of the game that respects human dignity equally, that doesn't privilege one group over the other, but allows for subjective beliefs and allows for even very committed beliefs that you believe that you are very right. As Imam Shafi'i said, I believe that or actually more than Shafi'i, it's also attributed to Malik and it's also attributed to Abu Hanifa, who knows, that I believe that I'm right, but you are possibly wrong, and you should believe that you're right and I am. That you should believe that I am wrong, but possibly right. I mean, the whole idea is that it's not either subjectivity or objectivity. That's a false paradigm, and it's far more complicated than that. In philosophical terms, it's not just whether it's ontological or deontological. There are many shades of philosophical positions that can account for much. The new vision of Sharia, I want to, this new vision Sharia of justice, I want to emphasize this, that I'm not saying that this is new, and this is the whole point. It is something that's completely new and invented out of thin air, will have a much harder time connecting. The idea that Sharia is justice can be seen in, we can go as early as back in the rebellions of Imam Ali and the civil war that broke out, and and the rebellions against the Umayyad. You could read my exceedingly boring book, Rebellion in Islamic Law, to see that. The rebellions against the Umayyads and the concept, the very vague notion of the Umayyads were the first dynasty of Islam, something like 1400 years ago. A very vague concept of Sharia equals justice, but Sharia was then not even developed in a legal system, so people had nothing more specific. You can see that same idea in the concepts of various philosophical orientations, whether the philosophical orientation of Ibn Tufayl, who thought that Sharia is just intuitionism, or someone like Al-Razi who thought Sharia is just reason, or someone sort of block-headed and hard-headed and sort of myopic in many ways, like Ibn Hazm, who thought that Sharia is text, and so when this and then this idea retreats with the rise of Al-Hadith movement, and etc., etc. It comes back for a period with Al-Razi and Ibn Sina and their philosophical influence and their interaction with especially Thomas Aquinas and Maimonides, and then it retreats again and it comes back in the end of the colonial era. And so, and like a lot of ideas, there's often this constant struggle where particular ideas take off. You know, the book The Tipping Point. Ideas reach the tipping point and they explode for a period of time and until something else. And my point is that the Tunisian and Egyptian revolution might prove to be the tipping point for the return of the idea that Sharia is like some natural law orientation, whether you want to take the reason-based approach or the intuitionist-based approach or the original viceroyship contract with God approach. It really doesn't. That is clearly apparent in what people are citing, especially intellectuals. I mean, when Salim al-Awa, who in the past, Salim al-Awa is a very currently influential fellow, in the past has gone from citing some fairly stuffy, illegal concepts to saying recently saying the primary obligation of a Muslim is dignity and the primary component of dignity is liberty. He's obviously going back to a tradition that he's attempting to reclaim and rekindle and reignite. About Copts, actually one of the things that is quite notable about this this revolution is the involvement of Copts in this rebellion. I mean, one of if you've followed the releases by at one point the government had in its government-owned television. Government-owned television stations has said that the demonstrators, which the government always claims are the Muslim Brotherhood, although frankly the Muslim Brotherhood has sort of jumped on the bandwagon of these uprisings, not led them, not inspired them, and in many ways they even had to fall under the umbrella of Baradei, who's a very secular thinker, to have a role. The government said, well, they're attacking Copts and so on, and the Copts came up with a release that when Muslims would pray, because the security forces would often spray Muslims as they're praying with hoses, and it's on film, that we would stand and protect their backs. During this whole uprising, in all the violence committed, no churches have been attacked.